Never call them by name after dark. That is what the elders said, not to frighten the young, but to protect them from what cannot be unseen once it has been awakened. In many villages across the land, from the Yoruba people, through the river communities of West Africa, and into the southern territories where the wind moves through tall grass at night, there has always been one shared belief. The world is not only what we see, it is also what listens. And some names are never meant to be spoken aloud. Long ago, stories were not written. They were carried by memory, passed from elder to child beside firelight. When the night grew deep and the forest stood still, the elders would speak carefully, because silence was not empty, it was full of presence. They believed rivers listened, forests remembered, and ancestors watched from places just beyond sight. Among the Yoruba people, there are stories of Abiku, spirit children said to belong partly to another world, children who arrive only to leave again, and return again and again. Families lived with both love and fear, unsure whether to hold on or let go. Some mothers marked their children with sacred symbols. Others whispered prayers into the night, asking the unseen world for mercy. But not every prayer was answered. Far away along the great rivers of West Africa, another name moved quietly through villages and fishing towns. Mami Wata, a spirit of water, beauty, and mystery. Some said she brought wealth and healing. Others said she took more than she gave. Fishermen spoke of songs drifting across still water at night, of voices that called them closer when no one was there, and of men who followed those voices, never quite returning as they were before. And in the southern lands, there were warnings of Tokoloshe, a small unseen presence said to bring mischief, fear, and illness when angered or invited through careless speech. But all these stories carried the same truth beneath them. There are things that respond when called, and a young traveler once believed these warnings were only stories for children. Until one night, when he walked alone through a forest path and decided to test what the elders had forbidden. He began to speak the names into the darkness, one after another, laughing softly at first, then louder as if daring the night itself to answer. At first, the forest stayed quiet. No wind, no insects, no movement in the trees, only the sound of his own voice fading into emptiness. Then the silence changed. It became heavy. The traveler stopped walking, he listened, and in that stillness he heard something behind him, footsteps, slow, matching his pace. He turned, nothing was there, so he walked faster, the footsteps followed faster. The forest was no longer familiar, the trees seemed closer now. The path no longer led forward the way it should have. He called out again, but his voice felt smaller this time, less certain. And then near his ear came a whisper, so close he could feel the breath of it. He ran. By the time dawn came, he returned to his village shaking, his clothes torn, his eyes unable to settle on anything for long. The elders did not ask what he saw. They did not need to, because they already knew what happens when certain names are spoken into the dark. And from that day, the traveler never spoke again of what followed him through the forest. But sometimes, when night grows very quiet, those who knew him say he still listens for footsteps that are no longer there. And the elders continued to warn the children, not because they wished to frighten them, but because some knowledge is not meant to be tested. And even now, there are still names that are not spoken after dark, because the world is listening even when we believe we are alone. If you have heard stories like this before, and you wish to walk deeper into the myths your ancestors feared, then stay with us. Like the story and subscribe, because in the next tale, we reveal what happened when the remaining names were spoken.